The huge knock-on consequences of the Grenfell cladding scandal are still playing out. People who've bought flats in tower blocks with dangerous cladding can't remortgage them, and they can't sell them either. And now they're being charged huge amounts for insurance. The bill to cover one block in Birmingham is nearly 5 times higher than it was last year. The flat owners there say it's adding to the stress of living in a block that they already know is unsafe. Melanie Abbott's been looking into it. Mel?
Yes, I've been contacted by the people living in that tower block in Birmingham. It's called Islington Gates. There are 144 flats there. They're all privately owned, and the block has the same dangerous aluminium cladding as that on Grenfell Tower. And they have just received their building's insurance bill. It's £190,000 divided between them, but that's up from £40,000 last year, so a big increase. And their previous insurer, Aviva, has refused to cover the block on its own, doesn't want to cover all of the risk. So now 5 different insurance companies are involved. Philip Davis is the chair of Islington Gates Management Committee. He owns one of the flats there, and he told me his reaction to the increase.
Well, it was a big shock, really. Obviously, they've upped the risk factor. And this is galling because we've been proactive. We've been doing everything we should do to address this cladding problem. Nobody instructed us to do it. We've just taken the view quite properly that we need to make the building safe. And it's hit us just as we were about to embark on our first contracts.
But do you think that if you hadn't started investigating the cladding, it could have been different then?
Well, yes, I think there must be blocks out there which have done nothing. We've done the decent thing and we're being hammered with this ridiculous inflated bill.
You don't think the insurance company would have asked questions anyway, though?
Oh, yeah, they probably would have. But I think it's really about how we deal with this fact that leaseholders who didn't cause this problem, it's down to builders, it's down to developers, down to the government not making sure the regulations are right. Why are we being asked to shoulder these burdens for something we didn't do? And this is really about the government sorting this, because if the government stepped in as a guarantor, it wouldn't necessarily have to pay out any money, but it would, like it did in the financial crisis where it guaranteed everybody's bank account up to 85,000 quid, it would actually support the marketplace. So there's a crisis in terms of the insurance market because of this Grenfell cladding issue.
The government might argue that it's down to the original builders who should be helping you out, not them.
And I think they're right in many ways, but of course the builders have often gone, they've disappeared. Our own builders were wound up years ago. We're looking at legal action against whoever remains, not least the people who signed off the building. But, legal action can take years.
In the meantime, are you having to have fire wardens patrolling?
Yes, fortunately we had a basic concierge system. We've uprated that to 24/7 with fire patrols. We're about to put in a klaxon system on top of the existing fire alarm system. So we're doing things that will give residents, because this is the top priority, assurance that the building is safe. And obviously in the end we want to get rid of the cladding.
Philip Davis speaking to me there. There is a government fund to get financial help to cover the cost of removing and replacing this cladding, and the people there are applying to that fund. But, as we've reported before, that's not easy. Every individual flat owner has to sign the application forms. If just one person can't be contacted, then you are stuck.
But Mel, I suppose these bills will eventually come down, won't they? When all that cladding's been removed, all the work's been done.
Well, of course, that's the hope, yes.
In the meantime, they won't be the only people in this situation.
No, you're absolutely right. And I have heard of another block where the bill is also £200,000, so a pretty similar ballpark. And the charity Leasehold Knowledge Partnership, which campaigns in this area, says it's been contacted by managing agents of tower blocks who are worried about getting buildings insurance. Martin Boyd is from the charity.
The sector has a number of concerns about the sort of costs that are cropping up and, more importantly, the potential liabilities that could arise, should we get more fires like we had in Bolton and Barking. Buildings insurance is becoming a huge problem because of the cladding crisis. Fairly inevitably, the insurers are becoming more and more cautious.
And what do the insurers say?
Aviva, the company which insured Philip's block last year, didn't want to comment. So I spoke to the insurance trade body. Mark Shepherd at the Association of British Insurers told me that companies have no choice about putting up these premiums until the cladding problems are solved.
We are now 2.5 years on from Grenfell. We've seen very little action taken. So there is a responsibility on the building owners of these buildings. There is a responsibility on the government to make sure that these buildings and properties are made safe.
Insurance companies have taken years' worth of premiums in the past where there were no claims for years. Can't they now accept a higher risk without such large premiums?
Well, premiums are calculated on a yearly basis. I wouldn't see this as being simply an issue where insurers have managed to get money in the past and are now looking to claw it back. They are simply looking at their long-term risk up and down the country. And clearly we have seen, even since Grenfell, some quite devastating fires where there has been combustible cladding. So that risk is clearly fundamental to the potential costs that could come down to insurers.
What do you think about this idea that if tower blocks haven't investigated their cladding, they haven't established what it is, then in fact they might not be hit with these higher premiums?
We find that most insurers have been doing a full review of the buildings that they cover, and in particular high-rise buildings. Doing nothing is not going to necessarily result in not seeing a reaction from that insurer.
Philip Davis there has said that the government should step in and needs to become the insurer of last resort. What do you think?
The right thing to do is to tackle the problem. This is not similar to something like flooding where, unfortunately, in many cases, given the location of the home, there is little that can be done to reduce the risk. There is a clear and identifiable problem here that is posing a higher risk. We need to remove the source of that problem, and then you will sort out the symptoms of the insurance risk that it's posing at the moment.
And Mel, what does the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government think about this idea of guaranteeing this insurance in some way?
2 words, I could sum it up really, not keen. But I did get a statement from the ministry in which the department says that the pricing and availability of insurance is a commercial decision that the government doesn't intervene in. And it added that building owners should be exploring all options to ensure that these extra costs aren't passed on to leaseholders. And the ministry added that the government acted quickly after the Grenfell Tower fire tragedy to ban combustible materials on new high-rise homes, and that it has accepted in full the recommendations of the Independent Review of Building Regulations and Fire Safety, which of course has been carried out after the Grenfell tragedy.
Melanie Abbott, thank you for that.